Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the live game preview. Everton taking on Fulham this weekend. 5:30 kickoff tomorrow evening. I apologise about the lack of content this week, as I'm sure some of you will have seen and will have known. It was actually my birthday yesterday, and therefore I didn't do a video or a live stream yesterday, and obviously on Wednesday we didn't do one either, so I apologise for that, but we are back. It is the game preview time. There is a fly flying around me for some reason. It hasn't decided to enter my vicinity over the last 45 minutes, and the minute I press live or record, it has decided to start flying in front of the screen. So if you see a fly flying about at any point during this preview, then please just try and ignore it, because there's not much I can do whilst I am streaming. But it is the game preview. Everton taking on Fulham tomorrow evening. Of course, Fulham managed by former Everton manager Marco Silva. Everton coming into this game off the back of a really impressive victory at home against Crystal Palace last Saturday. Of course, our best performance of the season. In fact, potentially even our best performance of the last 12, 18 months or so. Some would say, I would certainly say that. I think you'll struggle to find a better all-round Everton performance in that time frame than that one against Crystal Palace last Saturday. And, coming into it with a load of confidence, full of momentum, full of high spirits after what was, as I said, an absolutely fantastic result last weekend. But coming up against a really difficult opposition, an opposition that will definitely give Everton problems tomorrow, or certainly could give Everton problems tomorrow. A Fulham team who have started the season really well, actually currently sitting 7th in the Premier League, 12 games played, 5 wins, 3 draws and 4 defeats. They've had 2 more wins than what Everton have had, and 1 less defeat, currently sitting on 18 points. As I mentioned, managed by former Everton manager Marco Silva. Of course, we know some of the players that they have at their disposal, likes of Alexander Mitrovic, who there was, of course, big question marks around going into this season. Would he be able to do it in the Premier League? He's played in the Premier League before, and his record hasn't necessarily been particularly great, but he's come into the Premier League this season. He's had a really good, strong start to the season. They recruited well in the summer, bringing in the likes of Bird Leno from Arsenal, who, of course, became surplus to requirements really at Arsenal, despite being a very solid goalkeeper in my opinion. The likes of Dan James, of course, who brings a ridiculous amount of pace on that wing. Harry Wilson, who again really solid midfielder. Paulinho. They've got Willian, who of course formerly of Arsenal and Chelsea. Andres Pereira, formerly of Manchester United. So they've brought in a lot of talented footballers who ultimately are in there with the goal of staying in the Premier League this season. Bobby Decordova-Reid, of course, who's been there for a little while as well. Fulham made the mistake of a couple of years ago of almost doing what, well, not almost, but doing what Nottingham Forest have done this season, but just not to as big of an extent, as in the sense of coming into the Premier League, being promoted, spending an absolute ridiculous amount of money. I think they spent over £100 million in a single summer. It just didn't work for them. They brought too many players in, too many different personalities, too many different new faces in the dressing room. They couldn't gel. They ended up sacking a couple of managers, and then obviously ended up going down that same season as well. And I think a lot of the worry for Nottingham Forest fans surrounding their future would probably be based off of that season that Fulham had, where they come up, spent an awful lot of money, completely rejuvenate, completely changed their team around, and then it never worked for them because of the absolute complete change. But Fulham haven't done that this season. They've come off. They've recruited sensibly. They've brought in a couple of players with quality and ability in the positions that they needed to strengthen, and they've got a really good coach there who at the moment is doing a really good job. Obviously, Marco Silva, formerly of Everton, we know him very well as Evertonians, and although it didn't work out at Everton, there were certainly times in his managerial, career at the football club where you could see something special happening. Obviously, towards the back end of that first season, some of the football Everton were playing was really good. We went on that run, didn't we, of 5-6 games winning, beating the likes of Chelsea, Manchester United. I remember beating Manchester City in that time frame as well. We had a really good sort of run at it. Obviously, it never worked out for Marco Silva in the long run, but anybody you really talk to about Marco Silva, they've got nothing but praise about his managerial style, his tactics, and, he took the hit. He dropped down the league, and, he obviously, he's got the job at Fulham, and he's done an absolutely fantastic job there, and they were absolutely brilliant in the Championship last season, and they've had a really, really solid start to their Premier League season. I mean, if we have a look at some of their recent fixtures, last time out, they beat Leeds United 3-2 at Ellen Road in what was an exciting game of football. The previous game before that, they'd beaten Aston Villa 3-0, wiped the floor with Aston Villa. A draw with Bournemouth the week before that. They had lost to West Ham away the week before that, and then lost to Newcastle at home as well. Again, Newcastle on a good run of form, but then they beat Forest, beating Brighton, lost to Tottenham and Arsenal in between then as well, but beating Brentford. So they're sort of beating the teams you would expect them to beat. Obviously, a draw with Liverpool on the opening day of the season as well, which is massive for them. They're beating teams that you would sort of expect them to beat, and they may be dropping points in the games that you would expect. Your Tottenham, your Arsenal, your Newcastle, teams that are in really good form at the moment and have had a really good start to the season. Maybe not so much Tottenham in terms of really good form, but they were at that time. So again, they've had a really solid start to the season, Fulham, and this will definitely be a difficult game for Everton tomorrow. It really, really will. One thing I'll say about Fulham is they can score a lot of goals, but they can also concede a lot of goals as well. I mean, if you look at their goal difference so far this season, it's bang on none. They've scored 24. They've scored 22, and they've conceded 22 as well. Everton have conceded 12 and scored 11. So we're on a -1 goal difference. But again, Fulham a team that do concede a lot of goals, but also, as I said, are capable of putting 3 or 4 past you. If Mitrovic is on form again, really, really difficult centre forward to be able to deal with. Big, strong, physical, will put himself about. Usually is the type of centre forward that can bully defenders. Usually the type of centre forward that, can throw his weight about and give, defenders a really, really difficult afternoon. Whether or not he'll be able to do that with Connor Cody and James Tarkowski, I'm not so sure, because Connor Cody and James Tarkowski this season, there doesn't look like there's a single centre forward that could do that. So that will be an interesting matchup. But this will not be an easy game of football by any sense of the imagination. One thing that I think Everton should be really, really positive about is going into this one off the back of what was a really, really impressive win last weekend. We spoke about it when we done the game review on Tuesday, and spoke about the importance of having a team and a performance in which you watched, and it wasn't just a case of, Everton have won a game of football, happy days, made up, we can all be dead happy because Everton have won a game of football. It was really a performance of Everton have won a game of football, and we were absolutely fantastic doing it as well. It was a really solid performance, battled well, but more importantly, the quality was there, and that hasn't been the case, for pretty much any game this season. Okay, we've beaten West Ham and we've beaten Southampton, etc. But they weren't really performances where you stopped and you thought, we were absolutely unbelievable today. Look at how good, X and Y and Z, where the quality was on show. Whereas Crystal Palace, as I'm talking about attacking quality, obviously in those games the defenders were excellent and the midfielders were excellent, but in terms of attacking quality, Crystal Palace has been the first time I think that we've been able to sit here this season and actually look at an Everton team going forward and take real sort of motivation and real confidence from it. I thought Dominic Calvert-Lewin was absolutely exceptional last weekend, and I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin should and will start again tomorrow, and hopefully will be as good tomorrow as he was last weekend. There's obviously a question mark around about who starts at right back. It's the title of this live stream. It's probably the biggest talking point going into this game. Does Nathan Patterson come back into this side now that he is fully fit and available, as Frank Lampard confirmed in yesterday's press conference, or does Seamus Coleman keep his place, given how good of a performance Seamus put in last weekend against Crystal Palace? I think the rest of the team is pretty much easy to predict. I don't see there being any changes, in that sense. Maybe Damari Gray comes out for Dwight McNeil, which I think wouldn't be too bad of a change. But the right back argument is certainly one that I think Frank Lampard is probably still having with himself, to be honest, that ahead of tomorrow's game, as to who to put straight in there. Because if you'd have asked me this last last week, after the defeat to, 2 weeks ago, after the defeat to Newcastle, or last week, midweek, I'd have said absolutely Nathan Patterson goes in without a shadow of a doubt. Now you're going to ask me, after what was Seamus Coleman's best performance in an Everton shirt in arguably the last 2-3 years, that might be a very different conversation, and it might be a very different thought process as to, who goes in. So, there's definitely questions to be asked. One thing that we do know, and we know absolutely for certain, is that this will be a tough game. As I said, Fulham are a team that at home have got a way of playing, a style of playing, and are managed by a manager who likes to attack, likes to play forward. I think his biggest sort of Achilles heel at Everton was defensively. He could never quite get it right defensively. It was never really his ability to be able to set a team up in an attacking sense and to be able to, get forward and create chances and bring in attacking players. It was always the defensive side of the game that we struggled with. And, ironically, we're now at this point where defensively we're pretty solid. And, we're winning games of football, and, we're defending really well in games of football. And, when we're winning, the defence is on top, but it's going forward that we've sort of lacked that cutting edge this season, obviously with the exception of Saturday's win. So, hopefully, as I said, Dom can be on form again, fit and fired, and hopefully, the midfield have as good of a game as what they all did last weekend. And as I said, defence, I think, for me, is going to be vital tomorrow. Connor Cody and James Tarkowski, I have absolutely no doubt that the pair of them will put in top-class performances, because they do week in, week out anyway, regardless of who we're playing or whether we're at home or whether we're away. But this Fulham team have got quality, this Fulham team have got ability, this Fulham team have shown this season that they can hit teams on the counter-attack, they can get at teams, they can attack teams, and the last thing we need is Everton being open and gifting this Fulham team chances, because they've shown that they can put them away and they can score. And ultimately, as I said, I suppose the plan for tomorrow, the game plan for tomorrow, I think shouldn't be too dissimilar to what it was against Crystal Palace. Now, I know we're away from home, and that might mean that it is dissimilar to what it was against Crystal Palace, because we're away from home, and Frank Lampard sometimes, likes to be a little bit more reserved away from home. But for me, I think we should attack and approach this game in the exact same way as we did with Palace. And by that, I mean, obviously we have to set up strong defensively, and we have to be aware that these are a good side on the counter-attack, and these are a good side going forward. They've got some real sort of talented players and players that can hurt you. But if you can get at them, if you can put pressure on them, if you can get the ball to Anthony Gordon, or whether it be Damari Gray, Dwight McNeil, Alex Iwobi in those attacking areas, we saw how vital and how much quality he has in those attacking areas last weekend, and he can feed Dominic Calvert-Lewin in, then, at the end of the day, I think we shouldn't have an issue with creating chances in this game, especially if we're on form. As we were last weekend, we really shouldn't have an issue, because, for all of the credit that you can give this Fulham team, and they do deserve a lot of credit, ultimately they're 7th in the Premier League on their return back to the Premier League, and they were the team that I think a lot of people not only would have had us going straight back down this season, but probably would have had us finishing rock bottom. And obviously there's a long way to go, and there's still a lot of football to be played, and we are only in October, and I get that, but at the end of the day, they've had a really good start to the season, and they're doing well. So it'll be difficult, but a game that Everton certainly should be targeting to get 3 points out of, for me. Anyway, let's get into some of the comments. Delamere says, if Nathan Patterson is 100% fit, then why not, unless you share the minutes between him and Coleman? We are going to talk about the Patterson-Coleman conversation in just a second. Cam says, Chris. Hi, Cam says, Blue Cali, what's happening, everyone? Chris says, Cam loves chicken strips in Virginia. Happy birthday. How did you know that? I absolutely do, but how did you know that, mate? That's a bit of a wild, correct assumption. Peter says, hello, Cam, up the F and Toffees, come on you Blues, is right, mate. Lewis says, happy birthday for yesterday, Cam. Cheers, mate, appreciate it. Philip says, all the best. Cheers, mate. I'm not going the game, Cali, tomorrow. It will be my first away game missed. Well, first game missed this season. To be honest, unfortunately, something's come up. I've got to go out. I'm going out in the night with my friends. So, and because it was a late kickoff, I wasn't able to make it, and that was already planned. So, unfortunately, I'm not. This fly is really pissing me off. By the way, really pissing me off. Peter says all the best. Hope you had a good one. Cheers, my mate. Cheers, my mate. Blue Cali says, oh yes, happy birthday for yesterday, Cam. Cheers. Nelvin says, give him 15-20 minutes for a couple of games, then give full time. Fair. Chris says that bottle of rosé is on ice. Cam with a fresh birthday. Tim says EFC graphic. And Peter says I love Seamus, but looking forward to Nathan coming back. Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, let's get into our predicted starting 11 then. Why not? We're here. We may as well get into the predicted starting 11, shouldn't we? We'll just jump straight into it, and without further ado, in goal for me, Jordan Pickford. Again, not a lot to do against Crystal Palace. Wasn't faced with anything that you wouldn't expect them to be able to deal with, anything that you wouldn't expect them to save or, to comfortably, sort out. He did. He dealt with everything that he needed to, and again, he's Everton's number one goalkeeper, so why would he not be starting in goal? Left back, Vitaly Mykolenko, thought he was excellent last weekend. Thought he was really, really good. Performance was probably his best of the season. Again, some people would argue it's his best in an Everton shirt. I would say it was definitely his best of the season. Really, really solid defensively. He was out to everything, dealt with everything when he needed to deal with it. He probably needed that, Vitaly, because I think in the previous game against Newcastle, he was quite poor. I think, again, it was probably one of his worst of the season against Newcastle. So for him to come out against Palace and, pick himself up, go again and put in the performance that he did, I think it was really, really important for him. And again, will do him the world of good in terms of confidence and all of that sort of stuff. So Vitaly Mykolenko starts at left back, two centre-backs. Listen, it's easy. Connor Cody, James Tarkowski. There's absolutely no need to explain it, because there's no need to explain it. Now, I am going to do something different. I'm going to do the rest of the team, and then I'm going to talk about the right back, because I think, obviously, the right back position is the talking point. Obviously, the right back position is the one that I think is the only real position that's got question marks over as to who will start there. Midfield, I'm going with the same three: Garner, Onana, and Iwobi. Again, Frank didn't change the midfield three for the Palace game, despite the fact that they weren't none of them were particularly good or great against Newcastle, and he still persisted with that same midfield three. So I don't see why he would now change it for a game after the three of them had been, certainly Onana and Iwobi. Garner I thought was solid as well, but after the three of them had put in really good performances last week, I don't see why he'd now change it if he didn't change it when they were poor, and he persisted with that same side. So I think the midfield three will remain. And then front three, I'm personally going for Gordon, McNeil, and Calvert-Lewin. I just think McNeil offers you a little bit more than what Gray does at the moment. Calvert-Lewin absolutely has to start, and if he can put in, a similar performance to the one that he did last week, then I think Everton will have a much better chance of winning this game. Gordon again was excellent last week, to be fair to him, absolutely excellent. So hopefully he can put in a similar performance tomorrow as to the one he put in last week, because I thought he was really, really, really solid. And then obviously McNeil come on last week, and pretty much with the help of a bit of absolute just godness from Alex Iwobi, pretty much created an opportunity for himself and scored the third goal as well. So I think he is deserving of a start. So right back, who goes in? Seamus Coleman, who was absolutely excellent last week, arguably his best performance in an Everton shirt for years, or Nathan Patterson, who obviously is returning to fitness, back from injury, and for the last 4 weeks or so, 3 weeks or so, we've all been sitting here saying how looking forward we are for Nathan to come back, and how quickly he will be rushed back into this team when he does return to fitness. Difficult one for me, because as I said, if you'd have asked me last Thursday, if you'd asked me this time last week, and we were just going into the Palace game, right, Patterson's fit, who starts? It's Patterson all day, because I thought Seamus Coleman was woeful against Newcastle. I really, really did. However, Seamus then went out and put in a top performance against Crystal Palace. Now, what I will say is I don't think there's a question mark around about the fact that Nathan Patterson is Everton's number one right back. It's as simple as that. He was absolutely flawless before he got injured. He's not had a particularly long time out. Okay, he's had a few weeks out, which isn't ideal, but it's not like he's had a 2-3 year injury and we're sitting here talking about him playing football for the first time in 2-3 years. It's been a matter of, 4-6 weeks. And ultimately, for as good as Seamus was last week, he hasn't particularly blown anybody's scares up for the period of time that Nathan Patterson has been out. So Nathan Patterson is Everton's number one right back, and that's exactly how it should be. Now, you might say, well, on that basis, Cam, he's Everton's number one right back. He's fit. So surely you think he starts tomorrow? Not necessarily. And I'll give you two reasons. One is because Frank Lampard is very big on loyalty and is very, very complimentary about Seamus and very complimentary about Seamus' performances and his efforts. I think Frank Lampard will have taken a lot of positive from Seamus' performance last weekend. Two, I don't think Frank Lampard will look at this now, given Seamus' performance last weekend, and think there's a desperate need to rush Nathan Patterson straight back in. Now, don't get me wrong, he might do. He might turn around and say, listen, this lad's fit and he's the number one right back, so he starts. I think we're more likely to see Nathan Patterson on the bench, maybe coming on with 20-30 minutes to go, and then starting the game against Leicester the following weekend. And Frank effectively saying to Seamus, listen, you were great last week, so we're going to give you another start. However, I think we can only be prepared to do that if he's also prepared to rag Seamus Coleman off after half an hour or 40 minutes if he's not having a good game. Because it doesn't matter if you're the captain, it doesn't matter if you've been here 10 years, if you're not performing, you should, the standard should be that you come off the pitch. What we don't want is for Seamus to get the nod because he played well last week, and because we don't want to rush Nathan Patterson back, but then have an absolutely woeful game, and you're sitting there thinking, well, Patterson's on the bench, bring him off, to avoid the the embarrassment. That's one thing we definitely don't want. Do I think that will happen? I don't know. As I said, Fulham are a very good side going forward, and they've got a lot of attacking players that can cause issues. But for me, again, this is a predicted starting 11. My prediction is that it will be Seamus Coleman who starts over Nathan Patterson. And I think we'll see Nathan Patterson on the bench and then maybe being introduced later on in the game. If not, definitely starting against Leicester because, as I said, ultimately he is the number one right back. So there you go. That is my predicted starting 11. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. It would mean a massive, massive amount to me. And yeah, again, this will be a tough game. They're a decent side. They've had a couple of really good results, a couple of wins on the bounce as well, which will definitely give them confidence and momentum, going into this one. And Everton obviously should be going into this one with an awful lot of confidence and momentum as well, given the fact that, we put in arguably our best performance of the last 12 to 18 months last weekend against Crystal Palace. We are going to leave it there. Only a short one today, but I don't think there's much more else to cover, to be honest with you. And I'm actually going out tonight as well, so I've got to go and get ready and make sure I'm all sorted for that one. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. Massive, massive thank you to everybody watching as a live stream. I really, really do appreciate it. If you're watching as a YouTube video, don't forget to leave your thoughts down below, and we will get involved with as many of them as we possibly can as well. We will be back tomorrow with the instant match reaction and the player ratings directly after the game, so don't forget to join us for those as well. But if you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new, up the toffees, and we'll see you later.